Hello, everyone. My name is Alicia Singer, and I'm in the Post-Bac program for elementary education. Thank you for joining me today while I discuss ways to better teach and challenge mathematically gifted students who have behavioral issues. This presentation is to assist teachers on ways to challenge and engage their gifted students who have behavioral issues. First, let's start with gifted. Most people think when they hear the word gifted that it means being bright or having high potential. However, according to the GATE Gifted and Talented Education website, it means high achievement capability in areas like intellectual, creative, artistic, and leadership fields. And here I have provided the federal definition that was developed in 1971 for gifted and talented students. Some of the most unique characteristics of gifted individuals are above average general intellectual ability to find and solve difficult and unusual problems, ability to process and learn information quickly, ability to see connections, relationships, and multiple perspectives, ability to understand abstract and complex concepts, extensive and detailed memory, intense love of reading, advanced vocab and communication skills, curiosity in many areas, desire to ask a lot of questions, intense sustained passion in one area which may change over time, and the ability to concentrate for long periods of time on projects of interest. I've witnessed a lot of these characteristics in gifted students, especially the extensive and detailed memory, the intense love of reading, the ability to process and learn quickly, and mostly the ability to find and solve difficult and unusual problems. From a more effective perspective, there are more characteristics of gifted students in relation to their social and emotional lives. Some of them are perceptiveness and awareness of being different, nonconformist behaviors, desire to become all they are capable of becoming, need for mental stimulation and preoccupation with understanding, perfectionism, introversion, anxiety, and heightened sensitivities, particularly emotional intensity. One characteristic that I see a lot in my clients with behavioral needs is the need for mental stimulation. A more specific example of this is one of my past clients who was gifted. Without saying too much about the client, he was on the spectrum and diagnosed with ADHD and ODD, or in other words, oppositional defiant disorder. For the purpose of this presentation, I will give him an alias, and I will call him Brandon. There are many research studies and scholarly articles to show a clear correlation between behavioral issues and gifted students. At the University of Nevada, the Davidson Institute of Research, who focuses specifically on the needs of gifted young learners, discovered that gifted learners require constant stimulation or they will become bored very quickly. Gifted students can focus for longer periods of time. Just like my past client that I mentioned, Brandon, he could hear something or see something one time and he will understand it right away. More specifically, a math problem or a math concept. So in kindergarten, he was already doing multiplication problems, and in first grade, he began to understand the concept of division, and towards the end of his first grade school year, he was already doing basic division problems. However, he did have frequent behavioral issues and concerns, and he was in a mainstream classroom. He did get tested for gifted, but they did still keep him in the mainstream classroom because of his behavioral issues, which I also would think because he was so gifted that he was becoming bored very easily. Like I mentioned before, one characteristic of a gifted student is an intense, sustained passion in one area. And obviously, Brandon's passion was math. There are solutions and ideas for teachers to use when teaching gifted students with behavioral issues. One of them is to offer the gifted student flexibility. You need to think outside the box to decide the best way to meet the student's educational needs. The second one is to challenge the gifted student as much as possible at home. The parents need to be supportive and promote the right environment at home. Another strategy to keep in mind when working with a gifted student is speak to their interests. Providing students a menu of activities and tasks to choose from is better than telling the student to build a robot when they think that robots are silly. If a gifted student chooses a topic of interest to them, they will thrive. Next, allowing gifted students to work with other gifted students encourages the gifted students to challenge themselves in unexpected ways. The students will begin to bounce ideas off of each other, and they will see that they need to exert effort into another peer's idea instead of just their own. And lastly, but not the only one, is providing tiered assignments and providing a variety of levels in your classroom library. There are solutions and strategies that works with gifted students with behavioral issues, specifically in math and in cases like Brandon's. We found that a lot of these worked for Brandon because he was constantly stimulated and he wasn't getting bored so easily. The first strategy is to use open-ended problems. Gifted children often require full details to a problem before being able to answer the problem. So the open-ended problems helped with that. The second strategy is to have the student do less problems, but provide the student with more difficult and challenging problems. While students are working on their regular assignment, provide your gifted students with an extensive activity that carries the concept of the work to the very next level. Next, you don't want to have your gifted student be bored right away, so pre-testing a concept in the beginning is a good way to see if your gifted student already knows it. Because if they do, then you can either start with their level of knowledge, or if they don't know it, then they can just learn it along with the class and then they won't be bored. Next is to provide lots of higher level questions, the whys and the what if questions. You also want to provide challenging, fun mathematical puzzles and games that extend the normal mathematical units and curriculum. A cool, interesting strategy that I found is to provide and encourage students to participate in math contests, such as math counts or mathematical Olympiads. Every student is different, so every student will respond and react differently to every strategy that I have discussed with you. That is part of being a teacher and learning all about your students, how they learn, what benefits them. But just to touch on different gifted and behavioral needs, students could be overly sensitive, which is where kids respond easily to sensory stimulation and can find it very overwhelming. Or they could be undersensitive and the kids want to seek out more sensory stimulation. So I know through my personal experience with Brandon, he was undersensitive and needed more sensory stimulation, which relates back to gifted students with behavioral issues needing constant stimulation. Overly sensitive children respond easily to sensory stimulation and can find it overwhelming. For example, they can be distracted by background noises, unable to tolerate bright lights, and they may say their clothes feel too tight. On the other hand, like I mentioned with Brandon, the undersensitive children need more sensory stimulation. They can display a constant need to touch people or textures, be very fidgety and unable to sit still, and they can even be observed jumping up and down or spinning around in circles. Like I have stated before, it is all about knowing your student and his or her needs. Some physical things we used for Brandon, especially during math time, was a fidget to play with while he completed problems. Brandon also liked wearing noise-canceling headphones while completing challenging math problems. Brandon also had an inflated seat cushion which provided him the option to sit still or fidget his body in his seat. Lastly, something as simple as moving the student's seat to be closer to the teacher or to be even away from classmates. So I know in the middle of his first grade year, his teacher and I discovered that if he sat specifically by himself, which he was completely fine with, and not around classmates to be distracted, he advanced and excelled in math so well. So even just something as simple as moving their seats You would obviously have to ask them if they're okay with it or what they prefer, but Brandon preferred to be completely by himself so he could work harder and better. So I hope some of these strategies in my presentation sparked ideas in you to better teach and accommodate your students. And I hope that you guys learned something new today, and I hope that you can take away something from my presentation that you could help with your students in your future classroom or in your present classroom. Thanks for watching.